Those of you that follow us know that we give ongoing professional workshops related to nonprofits and startup for-profits businesses. Tonight's workshop is going to be on how to start, operate, finance, and grow a nonprofit and a charitable corporation. My name is Michael Randolph. If you want to reach us after the night's presentation, please reach us at Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com. That email is Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com. So let's talk about the state of nonprofits, specifically to your grassroots that's getting started nonprofits, as well as your nonprofits that's been around, and specifically to African American nonprofits. According to Forbes, 50% of nonprofits will fail within the first 12 months of operation. Added to this, when it comes to Black nonprofits, nearly 1/3 operate with just 30,000 or less. They're made up primarily of volunteers. Over 75% of white nonprofits report having at least one full-time employer, while only 17% of Black nonprofits report having at least one full-time employee. When it comes to African American female-led nonprofit, they are among the least funded. We work with nonprofits from around the nation. Our mission is to strengthen organizations that strengthen communities. So here's a list of our different services that we provide. We provide a holistic, comprehensive line of services. We title it New School Next Generation Approach. I got into the area of community development and nonprofit because I come out of one of the poorest communities in the nation, which is the Sandtown Winchester community in Baltimore. I started in the early 1980s. I started as a community organizer. From there, I went to a community strategist, to program developer, to drafting community comprehensive initiative in distressed community throughout the nation. The picture that you're looking at is me giving a presentation at the University of South Florida to its grad students on community development. And as a matter of fact, I've done 2 presentations at the University of South Florida over the years. In Baltimore, I did a presentation to grad students a while back at the Johns Hopkins University on community development and nonprofit development. So we started in 2011. And I go back to those numbers when it comes to minority nonprofits in the state of minority nonprofits. We were created to change that narrative. We specialize in developing neighborhood planning and economic development initiative in some of the most poverty-stricken communities in the United States. We focus on creating a national and best practice approach. To date, we've provided training to over 3,500 nonprofits, government agencies, faith-based groups, businesses, and individuals in over 20 states. Added to that, we work with getting over 300 nonprofits from around the nation to get their nonprofit status by preparing the paperwork to become a nonprofit. So there are basically two types of charitable organization. One is, and we're just going to talk briefly on that tonight, is a low profit limited liability company, which is an L3C. The other type, in which we're going to spend the bulk of our time tonight on, is known as a 501c3 corporation. So what is an L3C? An L3C is a unique limited liability company composed of both a nonprofit as well as a for-profit characteristic. The uniqueness about a L3C is that unlike a nonprofit, and we're going to be talking about the 501c3, if you decide to close shop, you actually are able to sell all of the assets to that company and pocket the money. What's unique about an L3C, unlike a for-profit LLC, is that the focus is on charitable and educational purposes. There are two ways that organizations that do charitable work get funded by the IRS. Keep in mind that the government provides subsidies to foundations. And they do this if those foundations and corporations are funding those corporations in which at least 5% of their gross proceeds goes to charitable causes. The first is what we know, most of us know, as grants, and grants go to 501c3 corporation. The second type of funding is known as program-related investments. These are low to moderate interest nonprofit. So these are like your L3C, in which they get funding by way of loans in order to do what they do, which means that they're able to provide more of a flexible way of bringing in income, unlike a nonprofit. Nonprofit basically depends upon grants and donation, whereas an L3C is a different type of beast. And again, we're just touching on this type briefly. We do have a course, a workshop on L3C. So what's unique about an L3C is that they're able to make investments like regular 501c3 cannot. In fact, L3Cs can actually sell shares in stocks. They can make investment into public companies. They can actually connect with private equity investors. Again, they can invest in common stocks and preferred stocks in other companies. So as you can see, the L3C acts like a different type of beast. And we're going to talk about that in length in a course that we're going to be giving on L3Cs. Unfortunately, right now, L3Cs are limited to the cities that you see here. As of 2020, there's only 1,700 L3Cs throughout the United States. But keep in mind, these organizations are growing fast. So don't be surprised if in your state, a new type of entity come into play. Come, let's now talk about the 501c3 corporation. And let's talk about it in terms of, give me 1 second, in terms of what is it? Or what do you have to do in order to create a 501c3 nonprofit? So your learning objectives from this part of class is going to focus on that you should know after class. You should know what is a nonprofit, what are bylaws, what's a purpose statement, what are articles of incorporation and conflict of interest policy, what is the solicitation requirements, what's a 1023 application, all the way down to having an understanding of the three different stages of a nonprofit. Contrary to popular belief, starting operating a nonprofit doesn't start once you finish doing your paperwork. We're going to talk about those three different stages of how nonprofits can be successful, and we can reduce that number of nonprofits that are failing, especially African American nonprofits. So a nonprofit is a tax-exempt organization that services a public interest. It can be charitable, educational, scientific, etc. When starting a nonprofit, you should be able to have 3 ideas, basically advanced, before you actually start that nonprofit. First thing, you should be able to define what is your purpose? Why do you exist and what do you do? Secondly, you should be able to know what your vision is. Your vision is what does the world look like when you're finished with it. Your vision look at the future of the world. Your mission, which is the second conceptualization, or third conceptualization you should have, is what is the group going to do and what is going to do that. That is, what is the group is going to do and what are you going to do that. So now let's talk about the 3 stages of a nonprofit. Stage 1, the beginning. Stage 1 focuses on your legal creation as well as your compliance. We call stage 1 the emergent stage. This is when you start to put together your bylaws, and your bylaws is basically a written statement talking about who and what your organization. Well, let's take it back 1 second. Bylaws define who does what in your organization, from the chairperson to the treasurer, etc. So your bylaws are laws of your organization. The second document is known as your Articles of Incorporation. This is a formal document that you file with the government to create your nonprofit. In order to get your 501c3 status, you have to be represented. You have to, first of all, be recognized by the state. And then you file your Articles of Incorporation. In addition to this is required by the feds, you should also have what's known as a conflict of interest policy. Then the next stage in terms of starting that nonprofit is to complete what's known as the 1023 or the 501c3 application. Once the state recognizes you as a nonprofit, then you can file for your tax exempt status with the federal government. After that, you can file for your state exemptions. A lot of states have exemptions that waive that you don't pay sales tax. The majority of states do, but not all of them. The next thing you're going to file is your request to solicit donations as well as money donations from your state. This is how you get your license from that state. And then finally, the next thing you want to do in getting your paperwork together is to put together or to get your EIN number. Your EIN number is the number that's going to be associated with your corporation. Now, keep in mind, your your you have to be in compliance. That means every year you have to file with the state an annual report related to your nonprofit, and every year you have to do your taxes related to your nonprofit, and every year you have to renew your license to solicit donations in your state. Stage 2. Stage 2 is known as the intermediate stage. This is when you're putting together your human resource department, your board training, your policies and procedures. And this is also when you begin to think about what staff do we need in order to operate the nonprofit. The next stage, the third stage to the nonprofit. Stage 3. Stage 3 is known as the advanced stage. This is where you're putting together your organizational operation, your program development, your funding development, your strategic plan on how to grow your nonprofit. You're putting together your financial management system, your marketing, your public relationship, and your online presence and visibility. So as you see, there's a lot of steps to getting and starting that nonprofits. A lot of nonprofits, and that's the reason why they fail within the first 12 months of operation, is that they only get to the first stage of the nonprofit. They never get to stage 1 nor stage 2. So now let's talk about the grant and your organizational readiness in order to pursue that grant. So the second part of the class is going to focus on the grant. And when you finish this class, you should be able to describe the different types of grants. You should be able to describe the types of grants or types of grantors, the research tools you want to use. You should understand the fundamentals of writing a grant, the grant proposal, how to create organizational infrastructure, and to identify grant terms. These classes that we give are one of the most comprehensive and holistic classes that's given out there when it comes to grant writing. We combine organizational development with grant development. So let's talk about what do the funders look for when they consider funding a nonprofit. Remember we talked about earlier that Forbes say 50% of nonprofits will fail within the first 12 months. I think that number is 50% will fail within the first 12 months. And here's why. Here's what funders look for when they decide who they're going to fund. The first thing they're going to look for is what is your sustainable financial model? How is your organization different than another nonprofit? What hard and soft skill data are you using to show your position related to the statement of the problem? You need to be able to articulate what the problem is, and you can use both quantitative and qualitative research. What are the measurement tools you're going to use to show what success look like? What is the reason for you starting your nonprofit? What's your value? Who are you networking with, partnership, and having collaboration with, etc.? And it's very important that you be able to articulate your accounting practice. They want to see all of these things. They want to know, is your plan plausible? feasible, sustainable, sellable, and more importantly, is it fundable? So let's talk about the different types of grants, starting with the unrestricted grant. Unrestricted grants may be used for general support purposes. Most grants, however, falls under the category of restricted grants. So what are your different types of restricted grants? You have grants related to programs and projects, grants related to seed money. And seed money is that money that you need to get your organization up and running. Seed money brings on that first person of your organization, like the CEO. Your program and project grants are like operational money. Then we have your next category of grants known as capital grants. Capital grants is when you want to buy land, when you want to do construction, renovation, etc. It deals actually with land. Endowment. This type of grant is normally associated with colleges and universities. And then you have what's known as challenge grants. Challenge grants or matching grants is when you write for a grant for 100,000, and then the funder tell you that we will give you 90,000, but you have to come up with the remaining 10,000 as a challenge. Keep in mind when we go further in this presentation, you're going to find that there's over 100,000 different foundations and corporations that give funding out there. We're going to talk about how to assess that type of database. And then finally, in-kind support or pro bono, like people that volunteer for your organization and things of that nature. Pro bono or in-kind support can be very important when you're just getting your nonprofit started. We actually work with nonprofits that are just getting started from 0 employees to 10, 15, 20 and above. So let's talk about the different types of grantors. First is the individual, like you and I. The second type is your family and community foundation. That's like your family foundation is more like members that are biologically connected, like Obama Foundation, the Clinton Foundation. Corporation foundation, I'm sorry, let me go back to community foundation, are those foundations that give in a particular community. Keep It Foundation are those foundations that give monies and they're required to do so. They're required to do so because what they receive is subsidies from the government. In order to get those subsidies, they have to at least they have to give at least 5% of their net proceeds to charitable organizations. We talked about the different types of charitable organization earlier, both your L3Cs and your 501c3. The next type is your federated funds, like United Way. And then finally, your government funds will tend to be the most hardest to get and the most complex, but it is doable if you learn how to write a grant. So when you go for grants, you should be able to look at the advantages, which is the second column. Look at the advantages for going for that grant. And then you should look at the third column at the disadvantages. So when you don't go for a grant, this to go for a grant, but do your research. Grant research, finding the money. I have a list of different research that you can use, but I want to talk about what I think are three of the most promising ones, although you have a list of different ones. The first is the Foundation Center. With the Foundation Center, you can, they are in fact a nonprofit, and what they do, they act as a clearinghouse. They find out everybody in the world that's giving funding, and they put it in one location where you can go and identify who you need and what you need funding for. For example, if your foundation is a youth foundation in Tampa and you're looking for $20,000, you will put that in the database and they will come up with all the people that's funding Tampa for youth at a rate of 20,000 or more. Then you have what's known as grant.gov. This is when you're going for federal grants. There are 4 key approaches that make you competitive when you're going for a grant. In fact, it creates a competitive funding edge. First is make sure you read the application and look at the forms as well as the guidelines. Make sure you are having a conversation with people that received that grant last year. And make sure you're talking to the reviewers that gave out the funding for last year. And lastly, make sure you contact the program officer. Again, we mentioned the Foundation Center. When you go to the Foundation Center, you can get all of this information. For example, let's say you're going for a grant with the Bank of America. Then you can identify, well, who received money from the Bank of America last year? And who was the group that reviewed and made the award, and more importantly, who is the program officer that I can call and run my idea to before I actually submit my proposal. The problem. If there is no problem, there is no funding. When you talk about the problem, you look at it in terms of a problem statement or need assessment. Your problem statement of the problem, your need, represent the reason behind your proposal. It specifies the condition you wish to change. It should include the below type of items. In order to gather the data necessary to show that there is a problem, you should do what's known as both as quantitative research as well as qualitative research. Basically, quantitative research is objective and qualitative research is subjective. I'm sorry, quantitative research is objective and qualitative research is subjective. Now that you have that out the way, now you want to actually design the program or the approach that you plan to take. So let's talk about conceptualization. In that respect, you should be able to have figured out what are your goals. Your goal is really about the final impact or outcome you want to change. You want change to bring about. Your strategy, this is the next component. A strategy is a plan of action, a method, or process you plan to use to accomplish your goal. And next is your objective. Your objectives specify the outcome of your project and the end product. There are different types of objectives from behavioral, performance, process, and product objectives. Now, let's talk about the methods section, which is actually the program design. Once you got your conceptualization out of the way, your goals, your objectives, your strategy, now we begin to write the proposal. The method section describes your project activities in detail, indicating how your objectives will be accomplished. It should include some of the following. You should be able to identify what personnel do you need, what staffing do you need, what are the qualifications, and what is the job description. You should be able to describe what facilities, what equipment, and what materials that you need. So as you can see, you should be able to identify who the target population is. So there's a whole list of things you want to have as part of your method section. The next part of the proposal process is known as the introduction. The introduction is a credibility statement that describes your professional and organizational qualification and establish the significance of your idea. Conclusion. Every proposal should have a concluding paragraph or two. This is when you get an opportunity to call the attention to the funder, your future, as to what will happen after the grant is completed and how you will seek additional funding. It is also during this section right here, unlike any other section in the grant, that you can actually get emotional. For example, let's say a mother that lost her child to teen violence. It's during that last paragraph, during the conclusion, that she can say, I do this not because of money, but because of a loss of someone that was close to me, and the need to make sure that no other parent feel what I feel. This is when you can get emotional during the last paragraph of the proposal. Nowhere else in the proposal should you get emotional. The rest of the proposal should be the facts and nothing but the facts. So when you look at the simulation of your proposal, you can talk about information that you want to include is your newsletter, your website, social media, especially artificial intelligence, GPT in particular, speeches and press release. This is how you want to be able to identify how other people will know about what you're doing. The proposal appearance is very important. Every time you write a grant, you want to make sure that you go to that section that's called formation requirements. They're going to tell you, for example, should be double space, single space, uh, and things of that nature. No, let me back up for a second. This is the appendix. And your appendix, this is the section that you're looking at that you're going to, as a matter of fact, let me go back one time. I hate doing this live. Let's go back to the simulation. I think we talked about that. Now let's go back to the appendix. I'm sorry, I don't know what I was talking about earlier. But your appendix is that what you attach to the back of the proposal. This is where you put down your board of directors, your organizational physical report, any organizational charts, resumes, letters of support, and past success stories. Now I want to talk about the appearance. The appearance, when you write that proposal, you should go and identify that section called formalization of your proposal. This is where the funder is going to tell you, should you use lists, should you use numbers, should your grant proposal be double space, single space, everything they want on how the grant should be formatted is going to be in that section. Evaluation. This becomes one of the most important sections of your proposal. In your evaluation, you're going to start to talk about how can you prove and what does success look like. So your breakdown, when you begin to explain how you're going to prove your organization, you're going to use what's known as a program evaluation. A program evaluation typically examines the achievements of your program objective. Second part of that is your program measurements. How do you want to measure your program? So key components of your evaluation is your program evaluation, your performance measures as well. Now let's talk about the different types of performance measurements and approaches. The first is known as a goal-based evaluation. Your goal-based evaluation evaluates the extent to which your program are meeting predetermined goals and objectives. Normally, when an organization has been around for 5 or 10 years, they need to go back and do an evaluation on their goals and make sure their goals and objectives are consistent with what they originally started out to be. The next type of evaluation is known as an outcome-based evaluation. An outcome-based evaluation is going to look at the organization in terms of the program. This gives a breakdown of what the program looked like. First, you start with your goal, as you can see, and then you break down your different columns. The first column of your logic model is going to talk about the what, or what is the process objective. The second part is going to talk about the activities, or how you plan to do what you plan to do. The next column is going to talk about who's going to be responsible. That's the who section. And then the next section talk about the expected outcome. This begin to talk about the why. The next section talks about the indicated measurements that you're going to use. What is the evidence that you plan to use to present your approach? And then next is your data source. That is, where is the documents to show that your organization actually exists? For example, where are your sign-in sheets and those other things that show that people actually attend your classes, certifications and things of that nature? And finally, your last section is going to talk about your time measurement, or the when. The final type of evaluation is known as a process-based evaluation. Some people call it a theory of change. In your process-based evaluation, you're geared to a process-based evaluation are geared to fully understand how the program works, the process. How does it produce the results that it claims that it's going to produce? The first section is your community problem and need statement. The second section talks about the intervention. For example, you got a program that's going to be 6 months long. It's going to meet weekly. It's going to meet an hour every week. And you're going to use the following material to determine if the person is progressing. And then the final section is called your intended outcome. This is called the theory of change, or the process-based evaluation. We've just gone over 3 types of evaluation. The organization, are you ready to get the money? And here's how you know if you're ready. Now, the first thing the question is going to be asked is your organization capacity, the why, the who, the what, the how, and the how much. Why does your organization exist, and what does it address, for example? Who are you, and what makes your organization unique? What programs and activities do you propose to solve the problem? How will you implement your program? And you want to be detailed about this. And then how much is it going to cost? As you move forward with your organization, you have to have organizational structure. You have to have policies and procedures, staffing, funding, sustainability, physical control, access to support resources for sustainability, and you should be able to do a SWOT test or SWOT analogy. You also want to, as you grow as a nonprofit, one of the most important things that funders look for is your 5-year strategic plan. Your 5-year strategic plan before you apply for a major grant. Here are some of the components you should have: your goals, your strategies, your objectives, your tactics, your operations and methods, and your budget. Now, before you do your strategic plan, you want to do what's known as a SWOT analysis. That is, this is what we call a strategic planning tool to evaluate the strengths of your organization, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. This type of evaluation is normally done during at least the second or third year of operation. You can, and I advise you to do it during your first year of operation. Because when you're writing that grant, you always want to be in a better position. Understand that thousands upon 10,000 of people are writing for grants every year. So you're in a large group of people. You want to do everything you can to stand out. And the SWOT analysis is normally only done by your top 10 Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 500 companies. You want to do the same thing because you want to be able to show that while you're a nonprofit, you approach it using a business approach. So what is some of the key components of a strong nonprofit? First, you should know your values. That is, what do you believe? You should know your mission. That is, why do you exist? This is part of your long-term approach. Next, you should know what is your vision. That is, where are you going? This focuses on your midterm approach. And then your strategy, that is, how will you get there? And then your tactics. And your tactics, what will you do to get there? These are all part of your short-term objective. Notice you should have long-term, short, mid-term, and short-term objective. Stage 3, I want to repeat again. It's so important that you put together a business plan. Now, understand a business plan is different from a strategic plan. A strategic plan look at internal operation. A business plan look at your financial component of your business. How will you bring in the money? Next is your operational plan, your physical management, fundraising, safety and risk management, your marketing plan and branding, and your partnership and collaboration. Funding. When we're talking about what funders want to see is, what are you planning to do for future funding? Let's talk about a strategy or model that you can use. The 2 questions you should be answering yourself: what will be necessary to keep your program going? And then you should be able to identify the potential resources and how you plan to secure them. The model we use is what's known as a social entrepreneur approach to funding. A social entrepreneur approach is the ability to fund the future of a nonprofit through a combination of earned income, charitable contributions, and public sector subsidies. The earned income is used to pursue social objectives by simultaneously seeking both financial and social return on investment. There are 4 categories. First is input, the second is output, the third is outcome, and finally, the 4th is benefit. When we look at input from grants, from fees for services, development fees, grant consultant fees, from owning and operating in your business as well as to investment. The next part, when we talk about output, where does the money go to? For example, this was a community development model, so their programs went to employment, public safety, youth service, community service, affordable housing, community mapping, and neighborhood evaluation. The third category, which is outcome, their outcome includes increasing employment, increasing affordable housing, reduction of crime, improved quality of life. Their benefits, and this is what funders like to see, even if it's local government, their benefit includes increasing the tax base, since they're going to be working with getting businesses started, reduction in required city services, we're improving the quality of the community, reduction in public safety, which means that if crime goes down, the amount of money that government have to put in that community reduces, a reduction in risk for lenders. So when a lender want to invest in the community, they know that there's a program coming about to change the quality of that community. And then it will increase on the return of investors that are coming to invest in the community. And finally, better quality of life for everybody. Social entrepreneurship. The budget. I know you hate it, but this is critical to any proposal. We're just going to talk in general about it. We actually have workshop on each one of these categories. Like for budget, we have a 1 week workshop. So a budget project is more than just a statement of proposed expenditures. It is an alternate way of expressing your project. So there are 3 types of costs associated with. First is direct costs, indirect costs, and cost sharing. And then finally, it's called in kind, even though it's not a cost, but we list it anyway, in kind. In kind can be pro bono work. Now, we hope that we've helped you. At this point, as you can see, not only do we operate the Center of Nonprofit and Community Development, but we also partner with the National Institute for Strategic and Tactical Planning. We have a 10-week lesson plan on how to write a grant proposal. Did you know that beginning grant writers make anywhere from 30,000 hours up to, when you become a seasoned, to $200 an hour? I hope this workshop has been beneficial to you. Again, please get in contact with us. Email us at Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com. The Center for Nonprofit and Community and gmail.com. Our upcoming workshops include how to write a business plan, your L3Cs, and a list of other workshops that we'll be giving, including how to put together a strategic plan, a theory of change, how to do program development, etc. Thank you for taking part in this workshop. Make sure you connect with us.